Hello and welcome to your guide to making an offer. So this is a good guide because we found a house we want and now we have to make an offer. And your guide today is Casey. Hey, Casey.
Hey, Justin.
So before we get into how to make that offer so people can get the house of their dreams, let's get to know Casey a little bit. And let me ask her, Casey, if you were in a neighborhood, any neighborhood in the world or here in Atlanta, what would be your spirit neighborhood?
Ooh, that is a good question. So I think my spirit neighborhood would be Asheville, North Carolina. It's a city, a little bit of mountain, a little bit of forward thinking, but a little bit of crunchiness as well, which I think is kind of a blend of who I am.
Mm-hmm. And a brewery or two or 20.
Always a good thing.
Always good. Awesome. All right. So Casey, let's guide people through making that offer to get the house. They've been looking, they've found the house, they're ready to make an offer. What is the first step to making an offer on a house?
Right. So the first step usually is we need to find out what's going on with the house. So myself as an agent, I will call the selling agent and just ask them, is there anybody circling or are there any other offers that are already in? So we know what we're going up against. It's a very different situation if it's a multiple offer situation versus something that doesn't have much interest.
For sure. And every seller has a different situation as well.
Exactly. Yep, they do.
So you get that information from the listing agent and find out, the situation of other offers, seller's situation. And so then how do you start to walk a buyer through that? What do they do once they know that?
Yeah, so there's a few key elements that we need to go through. The first and most important thing is the price. And that can go with what I just talked about, finding out is this a multiple offer situation or not? That's going to let us know where we need to go in at price. Generally speaking, if it's multiple offer, we're going to need to go in pretty strong, right? Yeah. If there's not much interest, we can kind of work towards going in at a lower price point.
For sure. So the price, obviously a big factor. I mean, I think everyone probably realizes, hey, I want to get probably the best price that I can. Yeah. There's a lot of other pieces of the offer though. What are some of the other terms that you help people walk through when they make this initial offer?
Yeah. So there are several different terms. I'd say the most important ones are due diligence, which is our time frame that we have to do our research on the house, the neighborhood, and for the buyer to decide if they really want the house. So during that time, we're going to do things like an inspection. If you want to get a survey done, get contractors in to give us pricing on things that may need to be fixed up on the house. Generally speaking, that's a 7 to 10 day due diligence period is usually what we will ask for. But in a competitive situation, sometimes that's a little shorter. Out of that, we need to look at earnest money. So how much money are we willing to put forward to let the sellers know that we are very interested and serious for buying this house? Basically what that does is after due diligence, we would lose that earnest money should we pull out for any reason. So it's just kind of our promise to them that we really want to take this house and move forward.
For sure.
We need to look at closing costs, which are another big piece for a lot of people. So that is the upfront cash that you need to bring to the closing table to pay for things like attorney's fees and things like that. So that's an additional cost that a lot of people don't think of. They just think of the price, but that's cash right up front that you need to be aware of.
For sure, because you need that in addition to your down payment. So if you're putting 10% down, it's not just 10%, it's 10% plus closing costs, unless we can get the seller to potentially pay for some of those costs.
Yep, absolutely. And there's a few other things, like several different contingencies. So you need to sell your home in order to be able to move into this new home. Yep. There's financing and appraisal. So will the bank even lend that amount of money to you? Is the house worth lending that much money to you? And usually those are much longer than the due diligence. And so within that, our earnest money is protected for those different financing and appraisal contingencies. But those are something that we need to be aware of and that we need to start working with your lender on pretty much immediately.
And so once we start to get this offer drafted, what sort of timelines are we looking at both to get a response potentially or to get an acceptance? And then even all the way down to like how long from making this offer till closing typically?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, for the response, usually we don't like to give too much time because we don't want them to be able to sit on it, take other offers into consideration, things like that. But we want to give them ample time to think through it and come back with a response. I usually like to do 24 hours or less. It varies on the situation, depending on the situation. And then on the timeline for closing, like I mentioned with the financing and appraisal contingency, we have to give enough time for your bank to be able to do what they need to do. But that's something that we'll ask the sellers up front as well. What is their situation? When did they need to get out of the house? And then ask the buyer, what is your situation? Do you have a lease that's ending? Do you have a house you have to sell? And so we try to make what works best for the buyer and the seller and come up with a closing date.
Yeah, because there's a couple of those terms where you can actually, as the buyer, you can give the seller some wins without actually costing yourself, depending on the situations of maybe, a longer or shorter closing period if they need it, or more earnest money, which doesn't actually cost you in the long run, assuming you buy the house.
Right.
But the seller likes to see it because it gives them more confidence.
Yeah. Exactly.
What else is important in writing this offer from the buyer's standpoint? Are there other either terms or things they need to consider for special stipulations? What else is important for the buyer?
Yeah, there's some special stipulations that you want to put in there to protect yourself around, making sure your earnest money is secured when you're doing these things. And I think that sometimes it comes when during the due diligence, as you're looking through the property and you find out certain things that are going on the property that may need to be worked on or looked at, you can come back with other special stipulations then saying that, I need X and X done to the property before I will purchase it, or I need to get so much money off of the purchase price because this is what will be needed to make the house whole.
Casey, that's a great point. And I think a lot of people think about, hey, I'm making this offer. This is such a big thing. I'm committing to something, but you're really only committing to doing a due diligence. You're not actually committing to buying the house until the end of due diligence. And so,
Yes.
In most offers, is there any penalty for the buyer if they make this offer and end up changing their mind in a day or two?
No, absolutely not. As long as you're within your due diligence, you are completely protected. You can change your mind because of the inspection. You can change your mind because you drive the neighborhood and decide you don't like it. You can change your mind because you wake up one day and it's cloudy outside and you said, today's not the day. I don't want to buy this house. Within your due diligence, you can pull out and not lose a single dollar.
Awesome. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And that's why, hey, we typically say, if you're 80, 85% sure, make that offer and then see if you get it, see how much you can negotiate and then figure it out during the due diligence period. On the negotiation front, obviously each house is different because of the seller's situation and how long it's been on the market. But say in a situation where it's there's no one else bidding. You had that initial conversation. No one's bidding on the house. It's been on the market a little bit of time, but not forever. What kind of strategy or what do you do to help the buyer think through where to start on that offer?
Yeah, so there's several different methods that we can talk about. One is we can look at comps and just see what is a fair price, what's going on in that neighborhood, what has sold, in the last 6 months, year, and what is a fair price for everyone. And then something I think that we say a lot on our team is, what would it cost you if you didn't get the house? If you woke up and you lost the offer because you went in too low, how upset are you going to be? What does that mean to you? So then we can kind of decide what is a fair offer and what is something that's going to make you feel good and confident in putting in that offer.
Yeah, I love that. You got to think about the situation. Is my goal to get this house as low as possible? And if I don't get it, then I'm okay. That's one strategy. To your point, on the other side, if I really lose this house, how upset am I going to be? That typically produces a different strategy.
It does. And a lot of times we say on our team, getting the house is the win, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially in competitive markets, that is so true. So, all right. So Casey, this has been super helpful. If you were to give people one, secret or best piece of advice for successful offer making, what do you think is the most important thing for buyers to do when making an offer?
So I say, what we're seeing a lot in our market is we're seeing a lot of multi-offer situations and houses are quick. So what I would say is, like you said, make sure that if this is the house for you and you are going to be upset, make sure you talk with your agent and you have a strong offer going in. Don't play games with trying to lowball or go in, asking for everything for yourself, because the seller has the choice, right? And so you want to make sure that you're going in strong and you're going in quickly.
Awesome. Casey, I really appreciate it. This was a great guide to making an offer, and we appreciate your expertise. Everyone, thanks for watching this guide. We will see you on the next one. Thanks again, Casey.
Thanks, Justin.
All right.
How was that?